Hi, Mark Miller here in New York City. We have the Atlassian team in San Francisco and in Australia. I'm going to assume it's Sydney until we learn otherwise. We've got Brian Fox here. We got Rich Seddon in Washington, D.C. Good morning, everybody, and good, very early morning in Australia to everybody, too. Let's start off with something that's been a pretty hot topic this week, Brian. You want to kind of give us a roundup on what's happening with SSL and the central repository?
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. There's a lot of attention paid to the fact that we didn't have SSL enabled globally for Central. And so we've moved to making that available. We've ordered the certificates and we have it up and we're doing some testing right now. Turning it on for the entire world requires a little bit of testing, given that Maven Central is used by so many different tools in the ecosystem that we want to ensure that we don't inadvertently break people's builds or things like that. So it's going to require a little bit of coordination and due diligence as we work through that process. But we are going as fast as we can. Like I said, we have a test set up already that's working with our CDN provider, and we're just making sure that it works properly with all the different tools.
Any estimated time? I know we had August 12th initially as the drop dead date. Any other updates on that?
As soon as possible. There are some external parties at play that we don't have control over. So I would like to say tomorrow, but I can't guarantee it.
Okay, that's good. That's decent. One of the things that came out of this, though, Brian, I've been thinking about from an internal aspect at Sonatype here. I was, as an objective observer, looking at how we responded to this. I really like the idea that we were listening so closely to the community that we actually could move forward and reprioritize what we were doing based upon community input.
Yeah, I mean that's how a lot of the stuff is driven around here. It was clearly a lot of people didn't realize that it was HTTP. It's not really a secret. It's been that way since forever, basically 2005, 2006, given the shift with Snowden and Heartbleed and stuff like that, clearly people are more aware of it, and hence the outcry. So. It's fair, and we're making it available as soon as we can.
That's great. Rich, I want to move over to you for a second on this same topic. Have you seen anything coming through the support channels that are asking questions about this? What's been the implication on our end for support?
Well, the main implication is that we are, as an interim measure, we're giving people free access to the current Secure Central infrastructure until we get the replacement in and up and working. So there have been some requests coming in for that, and we've been servicing those as quickly as we can. I would like to speak a little bit, though. It's quite interesting because there really has been a sea change in attitude that, a few years back when we released Secure Central, the main question I would get from people is basically, why do I need this? And now it's completely the opposite, right? It's like, yes, I absolutely need this, and why isn't this the default? And, as Brian said, that's a very reasonable question, and we are moving to address that.
Great, thanks. Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot. This is talking to Tim Pettersen from Atlassian. Tim, have you been following this at all?
Yeah, look, I must admit, I'm an avid reader of the r/programming subreddit. That's where I sort of first became aware of it, and I was like, oh wow, that's that's the show I'm going to be on Thursday. So when I saw that, yeah, I was impressed with the response as well. You guys really turned that around quickly. In fact, by the time I saw the subreddit, you guys had already put up a blog saying, hey, we're fixing this. It'll be turned around on August 12th. And if you need help in the meantime, then absolutely contact us. We can get you set up.
Yeah, I have to compliment everybody that was part of that, and I know I'm part of the Sonatype team, so it's like tooting our own horn. But it's not easy to respond to, as Mike called it, a painful public event like that. And I think that we knocked it out of the park on this one, I hope. And I hope it's being perceived that way, too. So,
well, from the outside, it definitely looked like Grace Under Fire.
Great, thank you. Mike Henson, I see that you just jumped in. Morning, Mike.
Hello, how are you, Mark, and everyone?
I'm doing good, thanks. Mike, we were just doing a roundup on the fun we've been having all week, and Brian gave us the latest update. Rich jumped in, and then Tim from Atlassian said he's been following it from the outside, and it looks like we're handling this thing very well.
It's certainly great to hear.
Yeah. Anything, I don't know if you heard Brian or not, anything to add to what Brian said?
I think he mentioned that we're moving expeditiously. Our ops team is working with our CDN provider, Fastly, who's been exceptionally responsive. We just want to get it right. We don't want any missteps, and basically, as soon as we can possibly do that, we will.
That's great. I want to go over to the Atlassian team in Australia because these guys are the developers that are actually using Nexus. Colin and Jonathan, very good morning to you there.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Have you been following this story? Does it affect the way that you're working with Nexus?
There was a lot of discussion about it, and people were starting to wonder whether or not the repositories we were using were secure. And because we're using Nexus Professional, we already have that link, so we were not affected. But I understand that some of the developers were a bit more worried about what they were doing at home, and they're really happy with the reaction of Sonatype here, which happened almost straight away. So yes, there was an interest there, and the fact that there is an answer is just perfect.
Oh, that's good. I'm relieved that you said that because I didn't know what your answer was going to be. That's good. That's good. Brian and Mike, thank you. Hold on just for a second. I'm going to move over to Rich. Rich, can you give us the support roundup for the month, and then we'll see where we go from there with the Atlassian crew.
So main thing is we've got a few releases. So we've done a point release of CLM, which fixes compatibility with M2 Eclipse 1.5. So if anybody's been affected by that, they can go grab the new plugin and it'll start working. The other thing that's going on is we're really close to releasing Nexus 2.9. So if you've been waiting on fixes or enhancements in 2.9, they're coming soon. We're in the final phases of testing, so hopefully we'll be wrapping that up towards the end of next week. Of course, you never know for sure until we get done with the testing, but it looks like it's going to be around that time frame.
That'd be great. So that's going to be available for Java 1 in September?
Oh yeah, definitely. You never know for sure, but it's going to be out by then, yes.
All right, good. From your point of view, coming through the support channels, anything interesting coming through as far as questions, anything like that?
No, actually, it seems like we're in a bit of a summer lull on support right now, which is nice. You know, we still have lots of
tickets coming in. But officially jinxed yourself. You better not.
I probably did. I just saw two just came in right as I said that. No lie.
One from Mike and one from Colin.
Yeah. We've got some time. Let's take advantage of that.
All right, good. All right, good. Brian and Mike, I know that you've got a request from Manfred to go work with him for a second, so you can hang on here or go work with him on his broadcast, and then we're going to move over to the Atlassian group here if you want to hang on for that. So thank you guys for coming in.
Certainly. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, Tim, hello to you there.
Hey. Maybe we could just do a quick round of introductions from the Atlassians here. Yeah. So I'm Tim Pettersen. I've been at Atlassian for about 8 years, mainly as a Java developer, but in the last year or so, I've moved over to our new DevTools developer advocacy team. So I spend a lot of time talking about kind of best practice and workflows, and more recently Git, because it's sort of one of those tools that has really turned around the way we do development at Atlassian. And we've got a couple of Aussies over there. Well, not Australians, but people based in Australia at the moment.
Hi, guys. Colin, Jonathan, you want to introduce yourself there?
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Dokovic. I've been at Atlassian for about 4 years. Before that, I was a vendor of Atlassian's. I am a principal Java developer. I work with the plugin SDK, a lot of our tooling, the plugin system, like developing that. And I'm also the author of the JGitFlow Maven plugin, which integrates GitFlow workflows with Maven. And so I hand it over to Colin.
So I'm Colin Hibbett. I joined Atlassian about a year ago. I joined the team that we call the build engineering team. What we do there, we maintain our CI infrastructure as well as our Nexus and storage infrastructure, so to make sure that every artifact is available. We sort of try to provide standards on the way to deliver stuff and just make sure that everyone follows the same path, which is really interesting to do, especially when there is this CI integration where we want people to just be able to release from the CI rather than having to do that manually. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there you go.
Great. Welcome, guys. Thank you. Tim, I think you and I can lead the discussion here because we've talked a little bit on the phone already. Your tool set at Atlassian is pretty ubiquitous now throughout the development community, and I think that's pretty exciting for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, previously we've had a bit of a branding problem at Atlassian. Like a lot of people have heard of a couple of our flagship products, like say Jira or Confluence. Mm-hmm. But I do quite a lot of traveling and speaking at conferences now, and I'll approach people at conferences and be like, "Hey, I work for Atlassian," and they'll be like, "Atlassian? Who's Atlassian?" I'm like, I work on Jira," and they're like, "Oh, Jira, yeah, of course, the bug tracker."
Yeah.
So I've got a little, if you don't mind, I might just show this little slide with a bunch of the developer tools that we do work on.
No, that's great.
So maybe to map it together in people's minds. So kind of there's a huge suite of Atlassian tools these days. They're all kind of, fairly centered on application lifecycle management. So we use them all internally to develop the tools that we end up shipping. So kind of we do a lot of eating our own dog food, you might say. We've got Jira, our issue tracker, Confluence, our wiki, HipChat, which is an acquisition of ours from a couple of years back, which was initially kind of like a instant messaging social collaboration tool, and we've basically beefed that out with a whole bunch of different integrations with our products and external ones as well. So it's really trying to make that into an enterprise notification center and try to sort of limit the amount of email usage you have to use to get by in your development day.
Tim, before you go off that slide, Rich, when you're looking at this tool set, Rich, what are we using in-house, Rich, from that tool set?
We are using Jira, Bamboo, Confluence, Stash, and HipChat that I know of. It's possible maybe some other ones are getting used too.
Oh, cool. I'm glad to hear you guys Stash uses. That's awesome. That's wonderful. I kind of like to think of Stash as my baby a little bit. I was on the original hackathon team that put together the first beta of Stash. So it's kind of a little bit of Atlassian lore. Stash was actually built in like a 24-hour hackathon, but we wanted to prove we could build like an internal Git hosting service, and then we decided to spin it out as a product.
Yeah, all of our support infrastructure code is in there, among lots of other things. But that's my direct interaction with it, so I'm a direct user of it.
Oh, very cool. Actually, I was going to say, what sort of branching workflow do you guys use with Stash?
It's mostly used for internal stuff, so it really varies a lot between projects. So the support stuff doesn't typically branch that much. It's mostly, maybe it'll branch a little bit for development, and then we'll merge it back into the master, right? Because we're the only consumers of it. And gotcha. I'm not really tremendously familiar with what other people are doing with it in terms of branching.
Oh, fair enough. But the Nexus core team are using Stash as well?
No, we use GitHub for most of our commercial products.
Of course, yeah.
But Stash is being used for the internal code. That's kind of the dividing line that we use.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense, right? For open source, we see a lot of that actually.
Yeah.
Tim, I'm wondering too, as we've got the developers on too, can you talk us through like the generic work set tools that you guys are using for development?
Yeah, absolutely. I can sort of step you through what our workflow looks like if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hold on, look, I even have a slide for that. Would you believe? I've been doing this little tour called Getting Git Right, where we've been basically taking over a bar in a major city in the US and then just giving a 2-hour presentation on how we do development internally.
And which bar was that?
It depends on the city. Whereabouts are you based?
In New York City.
New York City. New York, we were staying. What was it called? It was like a really swish like exhibition space in Greenwich Village. I'll have to look up the name of it. But it was quite a nice setup. But yeah, so we basically just do a presentation and then throw a couple of $1,000s on the bar and have some beers and talk about Git.
Let me know next time you're in town.
Absolutely. So kind of the generic workflow. In fact, what I can do is show you. how we branch. So,
Rich, excuse me just saying, Rich, you're much more conversant in this level of the discussion. So if you have questions, jump in right away, okay?
Oh yeah, I will. Don't worry.
So kind of like, I guess the fundamental problem that we had with our old workflow, so before I moved to Git, we were big Subversion consumers and CVS before that. And the problem we had with Subversion was that we didn't find it particularly easy to do a branching workflow. Now Subversion has famously cheap branches. Like if you read the documentation, it says, hey, branches are really easy to create, and that's true. But merging branches together tends to be a bit painful because you end up like the conflict resolution that you have in the Subversion toolset isn't quite as sophisticated as you get with Git. So
very charitable.
So one of the kind of things that resulted from that is that we just ended up not branching for a lot of stuff, which had developers committing straight to trunk. So Jira's got quite a kind of a long history with version control integration, and there's been this kind of pattern where every time you commit to your codebase, you reference the issue that you're trying to fix as part of your commit in your commit message, and then we'd get this sort of commit interleaving where we'd have one commit relating to one issue, then a couple of other commits relating to something else, and then another commit. And looking at the head of your trunk, it was very hard to tell whether your code was in a releasable state or whether you had half-finished features sitting around. So the way we used to do releases at Atlassian is we'd tap one senior developer on the shoulder and say, hey, look, you're going to be the release manager. Figure out whether we can release. And if we can't, figure out what we're going to have to do to get that fixed. So we basically have to go into like a code freeze, which is a bit of a productivity killer because you end up with a bunch of developers sitting around not being able to commit their code. And particularly since Subversion is a centralized version control system where you actually can't commit locally, it meant that you ended up having these huge change sets and often developers just not doing much at all. So what we ended up doing when we switched to Git is switching to a branching per issue workflow. So this is kind of the dead opposite of that, where instead of committing straight to trunk, we'd always create a branch for any bit of work that we worked on, regardless of how minor it was. And the incremental units of work were by Jira issue. So whenever we assigned ourselves an issue in Jira Agile, we'd create a new branch and then commit on that branch, get it basically ready to release. So have all the test passing, have it peer code reviewed, and have it kind of feature complete, and then merge it back into master once we're ready to release. Yep. And that's kind of the basic tenet of all of the workflows we have at Atlassian.
We went through exactly the same process here a few years ago. We were Subversion users, had exactly the same problem, and we now use Git. Like I said, it's mostly GitHub for the open source code, but the model is the same, right? It branches everything. Yeah, that's right.
Cool. And then so you basically never commit to master or develop, right?
Right.
Do you have continuous integration running against those branches as well?
Some of them, not all of them. No.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Just a major. So.
Nice.
But I'm interested to hear if you've got CI working on all the branches. That's kind of interesting to hear.
Yeah, we do actually. Let me just jump to a later slide. In fact,
we can get to it when you're ready. We don't have to jump there now. I'm just.
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. It actually ties in quite nicely with our Nexus deployment as well.
Okay.
So basically, yeah, we do exactly that. Every single push from a developer ends up getting built in CI. It depends a little bit on the project. So I know Stash definitely builds every commit on every branch. Not every commit, every push. So if you've committed several commits in a row and then you push it, then it only builds the tip because you're not really interested in earlier commits, and it's a bit of a waste of CI resources. And then we actually Stash allows you to enforce merging of pull requests, or basically prevents merging of pull requests unless you have a green build against the tip of the branch that's being merged in.
So just to clarify, you say Stash builds it, so it's not Bamboo.
Oh no, sorry. No, so Stash actually notifies Bamboo, and then Bamboo,
all right, okay.
Clones it and checks it out, and then builds it. But Stash, but then Bamboo actually notifies Stash when the build is complete, and says, hey, this particular commit passed all the tests, so this commit didn't. And then Stash stores that build status for you. And it can actually prevent you from merging those two branches together unless there's a green build.
Oh, nice.
So the reason we do that is so that basically we never break the master or the develop branch. So it means that if you're another developer, you know that master is green and you're always safe to build off it, or safe to branch off it. So you physically can't make someone else fail the build with their own code. So It's kind of one of
That's
the
very
nice
interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Oh, cool, cool. But there is kind of a downside to this, though, and that's that you end up with a crazy amount of continuous integration jobs going on. So, like, we've got more than 500 developers at Atlassian now, and if you imagine if we're building every time we push, like, we have a silly amount of continuous integration going on. Hold on, in fact, I've got some good statistics here. So the Jira 6.3.1 release, which is like one of our well, a fairly recent release of Jira, has like 56 meg of basically static web and flib jars, which all get pulled down from Nexus. And then another 94 megabytes of, we've got an OSGI plugin system in all of our Java products. So a lot of our functionality is implemented as external plugin bundles, which are bundled with the product. And they're again also hosted in Nexus, and they get released fairly regularly. And then, of course, we've got all of our Maven plugins and their dependencies, which are used to build the tools in the first place. So we end up with a crazy amount of load on our Nexus servers. So to combat that, Colin and his team have put together, oh, sorry, I'm just going to the slide here. Again, talking about how much load we have on Nexus. Because, of course, we have like just over, well, definitely more than 200 agents. I didn't get a final number because we've got a huge number of internal Bamboo instances. But we also have the 500 devs building the software locally, so not just CI. And then because we've got an SDK and a plugin system that Jonathan was talking about before, we have estimated somewhat north of 10,000 external developers also building our products or building against our products externally.
So this is the same Nexus then that I see the public instance that you have. Is that right?
Yeah, maven.atlassian.com, exactly.
Okay.
So that's this
yeah, I see that all over the place in customer configurations.
Oh, cool, interesting. Oh, what? So people are proxying maven.atlassian.com, or?
They are, yes.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I'm not sure if we keep an eye on that outbound traffic. Does Colin, are you aware of that?
Yes, we are aware of that. And because we proxy a lot of different repositories, we've noticed that we were not necessarily proxying stuff only for us, but also from some people that were working externally. And
yeah.
Awesome. So we've got this kind of symbiotic relationship going on. Awesome. So Maven.Atlassian.com is kind of an interesting instance in itself. It actually proxies 3 other Maven repositories. So there's Maven Central, obviously, from Sonatype, but we've also got the Atlassian public repository, which is all of our publicly accessible artifacts. So that's the actual like Jira WAS and all of our bundled plugins and things. And then we've got the Atlassian private repository, which is our kind of restricted jars.
I may have misspoke, actually. I may have confused your Atlassian public with the maven.atlassian.com. I'm not sure now. I'll have to check.
Oh, okay. Well, they're effectively, you can't get directly to Atlassian public anyway. I think you have to go through maven.atlassian.com.
Oh, well then, maybe I didn't misspeak. I take back my taking back.
And then we've actually, because we're quite distributed now, we've got 5, well, we've got more than 5 offices, but we've got 5 kind of offices where most of our developers live. So we've actually got separate Maven proxies in each one of those. That's Australia, Vietnam, Poland in Gdansk in the north of Poland, and the US in San Francisco. And I suspect we'll be probably standing one up in our new dev office in Austin as well.
Are you using Smart Proxy to hook those up?
We are indeed, yeah.
Great. Awesome.
So yeah, so all of the artifacts that end up getting deployed to Maven end up being eagerly cached in each. Did you want to talk about Smart Proxy for a little bit?
No. We've talked about it before on this.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I could just briefly mention that it's just a way to keep various proxy instances in sync with each other, so that requests that come into the proxy will always download new things from their master, immediately. The cache state is kept completely in sync.
Nice. Yeah.
I'm wondering, Tim, if the guys in Australia have anything to say about what you said so far. We haven't heard from them much. Colin, Jonathan, anything you want to add to what Tim said to these diagrams?
So, well, yeah, Tim's presentation is really good. One of the details that might be standing there, the reason why we have Atlassian public, Atlassian private, and we actually have other repositories that are hidden behind, is because we have about 8 terabytes of artifacts that are sitting around because of the on-demand release that is happening continuously. We keep a lot of stuff. So we have a pretty big infrastructure regarding the Nexus hosting. And yes, to keep all of that in line, what we've done is we're using Puppet. I know that in one of the previous sessions we were talking about it. We're using Puppet to just manage and make sure that every single Nexus repository we have is actually configured properly. And when we need to modify one, we can modify all of them at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. So you say you're using Puppet? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to go a little farther than that too. Are you guys using Docker at all to contain everything and do with Docker?
So we did a bit of experimentation with Docker. We found a few issues, and we didn't necessarily want to go in production with it. But internally, we played with it, and we're just trying to figure out how it will solve our problems and whether or not it's the right tool to do it.
Oh, nice. Because one of the things that I like to do is to see how all the tool sets fit together. And so, Jonathan, if I could go over to you on this, when you're thinking about the tools that you're using in your own development environment, think about the tools that you've got and how they integrate. What are you using for a master tool set there?
That's kind of a tricky question.
I'm good at that.
I mean, we have lots of teams, and lots of teams do things differently. Probably every team is a snowflake, right? But in general, at Atlassian, our world currently revolves around HipChat. All right, so every morning I come in and I open up HipChat, and it's a way for me. You know, I'm currently in Sydney, but I normally work in San Francisco, so I can come in the morning when I'm in Sydney and roll back through the HipChat history to see if I missed any cool conversations or whatever. But we also have Bamboo, our continuous integration hooked up to HipChat, and we have Stash hooked up to HipChat. We have BitBucket hooked up. So any activity on any project that I'm interested in usually gets pinged into a HipChat room. So I can immediately see if a build went red or green, but I don't have to sit there and wait for it. Right? I'm no longer in the days of refreshing a Bamboo page anymore. I'm now just waiting for HipChat to tell me, so I can go do my work. And we've also, you know, Tim was touching on workflows a bit with Git, which are awesome, and the branching, and the Stash and Bamboo have really tight integration with that. And the one piece that was missing was the Maven piece, because when you're in a Maven land, you have to deal with version numbers, and so I think the only bit of tooling we've added outside of the products proper was the JGit flow bit, which basically handles the Git workflow stuff in Maven for you. And now that we have that, it's pretty seamless. I mean, a developer doesn't even need to fully go read the spec of Git flow. I mean, we have teams where people come in and say, I need a new feature branch, here's my Jira issue, and then a whole bunch of stuff happens, right? A new branch is created, Bamboo gets notified from Stash that branch has been created, so Bamboo creates a plan, immediately starts loading the code on that, and all this is happening behind the scenes. The developer just starts working and committing code, and then, you know, maybe 5-10 minutes later, gets a notification in HipChat, hey, your first build went green. So
actually, if I might jump in there and just I can probably spread a little color on that. So Jonathan and I used to work on the same team, a team called Atlassian Connect, which is kind of our next generation HTTP-based plugin system, to contrast to our OSGI Java-based plugin system. So I'll show you what that HipChat team room looks like. This is just the web UI for it, but as Jonathan was saying, like, because there was 2 of us based in San Francisco and then like another 6 or 7 developers based in Sydney, we used to get into the office around 9 or 10 or whatever, and then just scroll back through that history to see what had happened overnight and figure out what we could pick up and work on. So this is that showing up okay?
It's showing up great, yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is sort of what it would look like when we came in. So you could see kind of updates from Stash saying which branches have been updated, Jira issues that have been created overnight or transitioned, and of course build failures. So if we saw, I mean, if it's a feature branch that was failing, that's probably okay. But if it was like our develop or master branch that broke due to a flaky test, then we'd jump on that and fix that up before the Sydney team came back online.
Nice. Rich, we're using HipChat for something like this too, right?
Well, yeah, we've got the Bamboo integration going as well. So, if you go into one of our product channels, like I just jumped into the Nexus channel, it looks like it's all clear right now, but then I scrolled back in the history and you can see there were some build failures and then things got fixed shortly thereafter. So, yeah, we're definitely using that. We are not using Stash integration, but I am going to have to take another look at Stash, I think. Maybe I'll ask around and see if anyone else has done that, because it seems quite interesting what you're doing with it here.
I think Tim would get you a Stash T-shirt if you'd be willing to do that too.
It's a large.
In the marketing closet, we can work something out. Actually, on that, I do have kind of an interesting. I've got a Stash instance locally that I was going to show you a couple of little things on.
Great.
Specifically, that gating branch merges in pull requests. So Bamboo actually has a feature that allows you to automatically merge branches, like when you get a CI test, or when you get a CI build that passes. But we actually tend to avoid that internally on most teams because we like to have like a human signing off before a branch gets merged. Because we're really careful about what features actually get merged and developed, but also because we have some teams who have continuous deployment set up on their master branch. So literally, if you merge a branch into develop or into master, then that'll get deployed to our dog fooding service. So if you're doing something traumatic like changing the database schema or rewriting upgrade tasks, and you're not ready for that to be merged, then you don't want your CI system kind of merging that for you. So the way we handle that in Stash, let me just share my screen. It's right one. Yes, okay. So this is actually the build-eng Puppet repository. So this contains those Nexus, the Nexus Puppet configuration that Colin was talking about before. So you can see we've got our little Sonatype work directory there with our Nexus configuration. So I'll just create a pull request just to sort of show this off. So I'm just going to choose a branch that we're going to merge in. This one's, what's it called? Continuous deployment builds in AWS. So it's got a bunch of live changes on it, and we'll. This is all staged, of course. just a local Stash repository. Yeah, exactly. So kind of the typical pull request process is like you assign a couple of reviewers, so to say, hey, Jonathan and Colin, create a pull request. And at this point, you come into this pull request view where, I mean, it looks kind of, it has a couple of interesting features where we've taken a slightly different approach than other vendors. But the interesting thing here is that you have this little merge button at the top here, but you can see that neither of the reviewers have approved the review yet because we just created it, and we've got one build that's failed, and then that's, so the way that works is it's actually detected that the tip commit of this pull request, so 1C6B12, has failed in Bamboo, and then it's posted a negative build result here. So one of the things that every team at Atlassian does, who's using CI, which is I think everyone these days, is enforces the fact that this pull request can't be merged. So if you go to the pull request settings screen, we have these little pull request settings here. So you can say, hey, it has to be approved by at least one or two people, and then it has to have like a minimum of X successful builds. So
that's real nice.
My local instance, I'm just gonna get rid of that. But if I jump back to the pull request, you'll see now that it's actually preventing me from merging. And it also has it actually has a hook. So Stash also has this Java hooks API, and this merge check, we call it, also implements a hook to prevent you from merging it locally. So if you try and merge it into master, on the command line, and then push that up, then it can prevent you from merging that there too. So you physically have to resolve the fact that build's failed before you do that. And if I prove that I'm not to you all, I can have a little test script here which will simulate passing the build. So if I just
so curious, so you actually have to get a passing build. You can't just go, oh no, this one's okay, don't worry about it, and merge anyhow.
Correct. Yeah, you'd have to actually go physically.
I mean that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean you can. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from, I guess, going.
I guess you could change the setting, right, and say 0 builds is needed,
yeah.
which is effectively the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, you have to be a repository admin to do that, but I mean, at Atlassian we've got a fairly high trust level in, like, I guess, employees, so anyone can really go and do that.
Well, I saw Colin laughing at that one, so I know he's done that before.
actually something we do from time to time because it's red, but we know it's actually green, and there is just.
That's right. That's still something we struggle with actually. Like flaky tests are still, I think, the.
I was going to say the intermittent failure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think I just wanted to add on here because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but I think one of the things that's really tying all these tools together is that issue key. So if you see Tim's screen right now, he has a Jira issue key. And that's basically, I'm assuming your branch have the issue key in the branch name, and you're also putting the issue key in your comments, right? And so then, based on the issue key, Stash, Bamboo, Jira, what have you, can all tie things together pretty nicely. And what's interesting about that is I also wanted to mention that a lot of people think that HipChat is sort of a one-way tool, right? So you just get, it's a bucket to get notifications in. But when Tim and I were on the Atlassian Connect team, we actually had bi-directional communication. So when I was in HipChat and somebody said, oh, I'm having a problem with this or whatever, I think this is a bug, I didn't have to leave HipChat to start working on it. I could actually tell HipChat to create a Jira issue for me, and it would go and create the Jira issue, which then would be the kickoff for all these other tools to do what they want to. So I'm in HipChat and I say, hey, HipChat, make this Jira issue. It returns me what the issue key is, and I can immediately just create a branch locally and start working on it. All right?
That's neat.
So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So.
Is that, I'm curious, because I'm not familiar with that. Is that actually something that's built into HipChat, or is that some custom extensions that you've made to it?
You go.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Tim.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's actually, so HipChat at the end of the day is just like an XMPP, uses XMPP for a transport, so you can build an XMPP bot that just sits there and listens for messages.
Oh yeah, we've got bots built for sure. So I was just curious whether it was something that we would need to write ourselves if we wanted to do that, or if that was something you guys.
Yeah, I think it's open source kicking around somewhere on the BitBucket Atlassian repository. I'll tweet out a link after this.
Oh, okay, sounds great.
Okay.
Tim,
you could write bots, but I do want to mention that HipChat does have its own plugin API as well, so you can write a proper plugin, whatever that means, for HipChat.
Tim, there's two things I'd like to move into the discussion here based around Nexus. One of those is something that you and I were talking about before we started the broadcast today, and another one was talking to Colin about the work that he's doing. But I was interested, you were talking about that you were playing around writing a connection between your tools and Nexus. What was that about?
Oh yeah, right. So I hadn't played around with the Nexus plugin API before, but then when I was thinking about what we're going to talk about in the show last week, I realized that I want to talk a little about HipChat, and I figured someone surely had written some Nexus HipChat integration, because I mean we've got all of these, as we saw in that room before. You can see Bamboo build results, you can see new branches being created. I thought, hey, it'd be neat, like since we deploy to Maven when we do a release, it'd be cool if we got to see when that actual artifact was deployed to Nexus. So I built a little Sonatype Nexus event listener plugin using the Java API. And it just pings out to HipChat. And you can bind different artifact patterns to different rooms, and it'll deploy it'll send a message when you have a new artifact deployed. I can probably do a quick demo of that if you like. I've got a little.
Rich, you were interested in seeing that, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. And I actually really just interested in the idea, especially. I think I want to write one for staging now. But sure, yeah, if you've got something to show us, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, let me,
And Tim, I have a feature request for you already. So.
Yeah, what's that? Hold on, you'll give me a take.
I think that my artifacts have been deployed to staging. I want to then tell HipChat to go tell Nexus to promote it. So there you go. Work on that.
Yeah. Sounds good. Hey, it's open source, man. You can contribute your own pull request. Okay, so I'm just going to share another little window here. Actually, I tell you what, I'll show you the configuration first, because that would probably make it a little bit more obvious. So I'm just going to share my terminal.
Colin and Jonathan, if you haven't seen this before too, I'd like some feedback on you on what we're about to see too.
Can you guys see my terminal there?
Not yet. Yeah. There it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to jump to my local Nexus repository. All right, so the configuration is pretty simple at the moment. I haven't built a proper web UI for it. All we have is, oops, sorry, conf. All we have is like a little JSON file. So at the moment, all I've got is an auth token for my HipChat instance. That is a live auth token, so feel free to spam me on my dev HipChat instance if you like. And then basically you specify ant globs and map them to room IDs, which you can see in the HipChat administration console. So basically I'm looking for any jar that gets deployed to Nexus is going to notify the room 625201. So I'll just switch over to my dev HipChat. Somewhere here. Okay, cool. So this is just a HipChat. You can get I'm not sure if you saw, we recently made HipChat free, and then we've got like sort of a premium offering running on top of that. So if you are interested in experimenting with HipChat design, you can totally, with HipChat plugins, you can totally do that. So, okay, so we've got messages. So now I'm just going to jump back to my terminal and deploy a artifact to it. So what did I deploy? Oh, that's right. I'm actually going to, in fact, I can probably, I'm actually going to deploy the HipChat plugin itself because it's just a jar at the end of the day that gets deployed to Nexus. I'm going to deploy that to the Nexus repository. So, deploy artifact. Okay, so Maven's running the deploy plugin. Just have to believe me, it's in another terminal, and we should get a little notification. There we go. So Nexus is pinged in saying, "Hey, there's a jar," and it's just sent me a link to it. So if I
that's great.
Copy that.
So I bet you could take that same code and just drop it into a staging rule, add the staging rule into the staging close, and it would just start working. Pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, totally. I was actually, as I said, it was my first crack at a Nexus plugin, but you guys have a really nice API. Yeah, and a very comprehensive set of events you can listen into as well, which is cool.
Right.
So,
hey, Tim, that's it. Like that was what, 4 lines of code if you include the braces?
Yeah, that's the configuration. Actually, it's up on BitBucket actually. If I HipChat for Nexus, I tested against whatever version of Nexus I have there, which is I think 281 something.
All right. Yeah. So that's the latest release.
Yeah, 281-01. But there's so that's kind of the minimal configuration I showed you. You can also specify like multiple artifact patterns, and so I'll just make that a bit bigger. Change the color of the notification, and we've also got a hosted HipChat version, so you can run your own HipChat server internally. And if you need to, if you're running a hosted version, we'll need to override the API-based URL to specify that. But yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
How much Java code did you have to write to get this working?
In fact, I think it's like it was originally just one class, and then I refactored it out a little bit. But it's pretty trivial. The HipChat API is pretty easy to integrate with. It's literally just like one post with that auth token to a particular endpoint. And the listener code in Nexus, in fact, I can show you that quickly here, is very simple as well. So we just have, it's got this really nice kind of subscription. So you just apply an annotation to a particular method on your component, and it does all the wiring for you onto the hood. So all I'm doing is listening for a repository item event store create or store update, and then matching that against those ant globs that you saw, and then notifying the room. So yeah, trivial. Probably like a couple hundred lines, including the configuration parsing stuff.
Cool.
Very nice.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that. That's interesting. I'm going to have to ping you to see if I can get an article out of that one. That's something that the community would want to see. I love the integration points like that. Colin, if I could go over to you here. When you heard that Tim was going to be on Nexus Live, you jumped in and said, I want to be there. I use Nexus. I would love to hear how you're using Nexus and what you're doing.
So how we use Nexus, we, as I said earlier, we have a lot of Nexus instances, about 10 of them. We manage them through Puppet, so the code you saw earlier is sort of the structure we use to manage it, and we're really fan of that because mainly the smart proxy system is extremely useful to us. We have many offices, and we need, and it's really important for us to be able to just publish something and have that something published everywhere in the world right away. And because we're using CI, and the CI is in a different server, and we're using what we call elastic agents in Bamboo, which are EC2 instances. We need a proxy in EC2, we need a proxy in our data center, we need a proxy everywhere. So being able to set all of that up is quite interesting to do. What we worked on recently was having a nice way to detail the configuration of Nexus itself, and just having a nice way to describe what will be the configuration of Nexus. So rather than sending a big XML file, we're using the REST API that is provided by Nexus, and we just say we need a new repository. So just like that, we get that new repository with all the configuration that is specified in Puppet, which is actually quite fantastic to do that. And for some reasons, we will need to create a new Nexus instance soon, and we think it will take less than a day, just the time to create the machine and run Puppet on it. So that's actually really nice to be able to get to that point.
Yep. And just for people listening, you know, the REST API is pretty discoverable. It's all documented within Nexus. You can go to Administration Plugin Console and get to all the documentation. But even better than that, the UI calls through the REST layer. So you can just watch the HTTP traffic from the UI to Nexus to figure out how to automate pretty much anything.
Yes. And just because we've made a nice module, a nice way to do that in Puppet, I think we're just about to open source it and just to provide it to everyone, so anyone could be able to just create a Nexus instance and configure it through Puppet with just bits and bobs of configuration, just declaring a few resources, and that would be quite nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Tim, as we're going through this, what is your guys', I wouldn't say policy, but what's your philosophy on open source?
So we've got kind of an interesting model. If you have a commercial license of pretty much any Atlassian product, then we'll give you the source when you, well, you can just download it through your my.atlassian.com account. And the cheapest commercial license you can get is $10, which we actually end up giving to charity. It's just kind of like a artificial barrier to entry to make sure you're serious about setting it up.
Rich, that's not something we want to talk about right now, right?
Yeah, so basically, like, it's not open source because we don't obviously publish the source publicly, but you can download the source if you do want to modify it, or hopefully use it to figure out a better way to write plugins against our software. We do have a bunch of other like open source projects that we do maintain, and we're trying to get better at cleaning up and open sourcing those. It's not so much a philosophical problem, more the fact that we try to, I guess, restrict access to those projects. It's more just getting the development manpower to clean those projects up enough for them to be consumable externally. One kind of cool example of that is the JGit Flow plugin that Jonathan mentioned before. It's actually, well, it's a really cool Maven implementation of the popular Git Flow branching strategy. But it's also kind of a rewrite of the Maven release plugin. So we use that quite a lot internally because the Maven release plugin has a couple of deficiencies when it comes to working with Git. I don't know if JD wants to talk about that a little bit more.
Sure, it's great.
Okay. Next subject.
Yeah, when Tim and I started on the Atlassian Connect project, we knew we were going to have a pretty distributed team, and like Tim said, some teams at Atlassian were already using feature branches, but we wanted to take that maybe a step further and get the whole CI process going, the whole Maven deployment process going, and so we decided to use Git Flow because it just seemed like the right workflow for our team. And then I researched, Maven tools around Git and Git Flow, and there weren't very many. And I did try to integrate the Maven release plugin from the get-go, and that just went horribly awry. And so the Maven Git Flow plugin came out of that, but first I had to write an implementation of Git Flow in Java, so there was another library that the plugin is based on, and it's just the JGit Flow library. And once I created those, it was one of those things where it was just too useful for other tools. So I can imagine, our own products like Stash wanting to do Git Flow, and if there's already a Java library for it, great. I can imagine other things out in the wild that would also want to do Git Flow workflows, and so it just made sense to open source that stuff. So I basically just whacked it up on BitBucket, put got it into Maven Central, and there we go.
Great, thanks. As we're coming down to about 10 minutes left here, Colin, I want to come back to you on this. As you're using Nexus on a daily basis here, if you could wave your magic wand, what else would you like? What do you see Nexus doing next? What would you like it to do next?
Oh, well, because of the storage usage we have right now, the next big thing I would love to see is being able to store our artifacts directly on S3 or on any cheap storage. That would be fantastic. Right now we're dealing with the backups ourselves. We're doing all that work ourselves, which is fine. But if we could just delegate all of that to, let's say, Amazon or any other system where we could just store our artifacts, that would be just a lot of work that would be removed from our side.
Nice. Rich, have we heard that request before?
We've heard definitely a lot of variations on that request, yeah. So, you know, the way that Nexus stores its artifacts has a lot of advantages, right? Just storing things basically in their native format is nice. You can go in and directly manipulate things, but then it makes, you know, replication and things like that a little bit difficult sometimes. And that actually is going to be one of the major focuses. Is actually one of the major focuses of the Nexus 3.0 work that we're starting right now. Is completely revamping the way that Nexus uses storage, and hopefully it should make what you're asking for possible.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. To kind of summarize what we're talking about here, I'd like to continue the discussion just between the companies as to how our tools can work together better.
Yeah, look, I think we've got a kind of an internal team at Atlassian called Fusion at the moment, which is trying to work on better integration between our own tools internally. Because traditionally, like, all of our product teams have been quite siloed, but we're trying to get better at building sort of richer integrations between them. And I think things like HipChat for Nexus, because I mean, server-side Nexus has such a nice plugin API, and we've got a fairly nice plugin API as well. I think building these little modules of functionality that people can pick and mix to work into their regular workflows would be a nice thing to do. I'd really like to explore some richer integration between Bamboo, our continuous integration server, and Nexus, because I don't know if we have any special support. I mean, we've got like Maven 2 integration, which obviously deploys to Nexus, but there might be some other interesting stuff we can do there, particularly in terms of promoting artifacts from things like from staging environments to production environments and things like that.
Great, thanks. Rich, let's go back to Atlassian too. If we were talking about working together with the two tools, what do you see happening there?
I would definitely say that, yeah, tighter integration with Bamboo for both of our main products, CLM and Nexus, is something that I would like to see happen. I know that Bamboo integration for CLM is on the radar, and it's going to be coming up before too long. And definitely a tighter integration with Nexus and Bamboo makes a lot of sense. And we could certainly make use of it ourselves. So I would expect to see that coming, sometime after Nexus 3.0. We'll probably be writing it unless you guys get to it first. But
absolutely happy to collaborate on that.
Yeah.
Keep this dialogue going.
Yeah.
All right. Tim, I'm going to say thank you for taking the time. And the guys in Australia, thank you for getting up probably at 5:30 in the morning to be here at 6, if not before. So very, very much appreciated. I hope that we can follow up on this too, so that we can actually get the two teams working together and really get a powerful tool set going between us.
Fantastic. Oh, look, thank you so much for having us. Actually, I did mention that there was kind of like I managed to sweet talk the marketing team into giving us a couple of HipChat T-shirts to give away if anyone was interested. May I propose a little challenge for the viewers?
How many have you got? How many shirts you got?
I have 3 at the moment. Although I'm sure I can wrangle some extra for the server.
Okay, so I've got people listening. What's the challenge?
Okay, so the challenge is, if you recall, I showed that configuration file which had an auth token for the HipChat API and a particular room. If you manage to message that room with that auth token with your Twitter handle, I'll send you a swag code for an Atlassian T-shirt.
Very nice.
Right,
So,
I gotta hit rewind here.
Yeah.
You can't do that until I stop the broadcast.
Awesome. And
All right.
if no one gets it in the first, say, 30 minutes, I'll tweet out that access code, and we'll see who gets there first.
That would be great. Jonathan, Colin, thank you very much. I hope I get to see you at one of the conferences when I'm down under, or you're here in the States soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was a fun talk.
All right, thanks.
Oh, it's getting dark here.
Yeah, they're turning off.
Oh, you guys didn't move enough. You got those light motion activated.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Oh.
I
Wow.
feel like it's the Blair Witch Project or something going on.
Yeah. Where did Colin go? Uh-oh. Yeah.
The lights
Trying to
going.
figure out how to turn on the lights.
Tim, I'll probably see you before I see the others because I'll be in San Francisco within the next month. But thank you and your team for the time. Very much appreciated.
Oh, look, thanks very much for having us.
All right. This is Mark Miller in New York City, Rich said, and in Washington, the team from Atlassian in San Francisco and in Australia. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Colin's back in. He got the lights back on. That's exciting to see. And we hope to see everybody soon. Get that auth token up on Twitter, and we'll see if we can get you guys a T-shirt. All right. Take care. Thanks for coming.